The Buffalo Bills have their head coach, and after 9 interviews, it comes from within. Offensive coordinator Joe Brady gets the promotion to the big chair. Brady has been with the Bills since 2022. He first served as the team's quarterback coach before being promoted to offensive coordinator, the role he has held since midway through the 2023 season. Nothing yet, though, on when Brady is going to speak with the media. When it is announced, you can find that information right here on WGR. But before even that, we are starting to get rumblings of who could join Brady on his staff. Adam Schefter reporting that Denver defensive pass game coordinator Jim Leonhard is expected to be a leading candidate for the Bills' defensive coordinator position. For more on Brady getting hired to the Bills as their next head coach, Sal Capaccio does have a piece up at our website, WGR550.com. And do stay tuned. We'll also hear from Sal in about an hour at 4 p.m. Some other notes in the league. Brian Daboll is heading to Tennessee to be their offensive coordinator. Daboll was considered a finalist for the Bills' head coaching position. The Jets are moving on from offensive coordinator Tanner Engstrand after just 1 season. And the Steelers officially have named Mike McCarthy their next head coach. McCarthy also spoke with the media earlier today. To the Sabres, they're in action tonight. They are just north of the border as they take on Toronto. Puck drop at 7, pregame at 6. Both, of course, right here on WGR. And then 9 other games tonight. Some matchups, though, to keep an eye on. Montreal hosts Las Vegas. Detroit, they have the Kings in town. The Bruins host Nashville. And Florida, they play host to Utah. All 4 of those games also will get going just after 7. That's Paddock Chevrolet Sports Update. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of being your hometown dealership. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
It's 100% an open search. The list is not final, and there is no front runner, old, young, former coach, first-time coach. We're opening every door. We got to find the right guy for this team to help get us over the hump.
It's Mike Schopp and the Bulldog.
The Bills are promoting Joe Brady to be the 17th head coach in team history.
It's Mike Schopp.
Joe Brady, despite his age, despite his lack of head coaching experience, is going to have the most pressure on him internally and externally as any coach in the NFL.
And the Bulldog.
This is a bigger job than just a play caller and a schemer. It's a CEO job. It really is.
On WGR Sports Radio 550.
Okay. Hopefully the Sabres made it to Toronto. I got close this morning. It wasn't pretty. Very random that I was able to find out in time to reverse course and be here on what was a scheduled day off for me to talk to you, because I have still never figured out how to get my phone to work in Canada unless I have Wi-Fi, which is not the case in my car. Mm-hmm. And if I weren't displeased with a couple of other of my regular options on the radio this morning, I would have not known until like an hour after it came down.
Well, thank God you're here.
Well, I don't know. I'm not sure I'm ready to say that.
Yeah, I don't know.
I stared. I saw it. I'm changing channels. Once you get on the QEW, it's not snowy really, or it wasn't this morning. Mm-hmm. It's all the side roads though were a mess. I get on the highway and I'm cruising, and I'm changing channels because something's in an ad and something else is annoying. And I get to NFL radio, and it's written on the screen, Bills to hire Joe Brady.
That's helpful.
I stared at it. I mean, the combination of right now, really, are you sure this couldn't have waited, a couple of hours?
I got to turn this rig around.
And Joe Brady, as recently as yesterday, in a conversation with Sal included, no. Right?
No. Right. Yeah, they're getting stuck at the proverbial playoff wall. I said the same. I was on, funny enough, Toronto. I was on Toronto radio, TSN this morning, and one of those hosts is Carlo Koliakovo, played for the Sabres, played for the Leafs, played for the Blues. I don't know who else. I don't need to run down his whole career. It's not germane, really. Anyway, he said, or his partner said, Carlo's hearing Brady and somebody else are like the leaders, like the best chance.
And you set him straight.
And I said, I just don't know about Brady. I sort of regurgitated what we talked about with Sal yesterday. right? We need a new voice. We need new leadership. We need something that can help us get over the final hump. So we're going to give the job to a guy that's been here for the last 3 or 4 years. Okay. I said, I don't think that really makes sense. So I did tell him we're hearing a lot of Brady's name here too. I feel like I have been hearing that. I just didn't trust it. I thought it was mostly founded in they'll do the easiest thing available. You know, people who are already critical ahead of time of who they're going to hire, like, of course they're just going to hire Brady. He's here. It's convenient.
That's what happened.
And that is what ended up happening. The thing I am most concerned by in the reporting that's gone on here in the, I guess, 4 hours plus since this news came out, or right around 4 hours, is how specific one reporter, Jordan Schultz, was about what got Brady home, what got him the job. I'm fine. The CEO stuff, that was a home run. Okay. Recognizing the importance of the front office and the coaching staff being aligned on personnel. You know what that reads like to me? That reads like to me the one guy who was critical about the personnel got fired.
Yep.
And everybody else gets to stay. And so, to me, everyone else gets to stay also makes it sound like I know the whole staff is staying, and we don't know that.
No, but they were at risk of losing much of it had they gone in a different direction, and now they don't have to worry about that.
Right.
This is the easiest option. Just like if they had to move on from McDermott, which I decided I think was because of an internal conflict.
Right.
As much as anything else.
That's why I'm concerned about this being aligned on personnel. It just, to me, doesn't sound good.
Why not Brandon Beane, everybody said the day the McDermott news came down, because this is easier. If you're an owner who's really not that interested in getting his hands dirty and might even know well enough to know it's a bad idea, you don't fire the general manager and do the search yourself using, McDermott and or Josh Allen to participate in the, to offer opinions. No, you don't want that. This is easier. Yeah, okay, well, maybe they didn't have good players, but the GM thinks they do, and it's easier for me if he stays and McDermott goes. Then, now I've got this wide open search. Beane doesn't have to come back on WGR after the draft to find clips of him already in 2026 that are going to stand out. Like just that clip we just played. How wide open a search. Is this too strong? What an insult to these other candidates. Wide open search, no front runner, young, old, offense, defense, we don't care. And you've got guys here that, seem like pretty hot items in some cases. And the morning after finishing the interviews, you're done. Yeah, we're going to keep it. We're going to promote from within. Who wanted this outcome? Who wanted this outcome? You don't have to tell me that the Bills' offense has been really good. I know.
Right.
Who wanted this outcome? Anybody? Who was rooting for Joe Brady?
Maybe Josh Allen.
Well, maybe. He probably didn't hate the idea. He also doesn't have to do any lifting because it's not his decision. He probably will want to disown any responsibility in the decision.
That's already happening this afternoon.
Yeah, what do you know?
There's Peter Schrager from NFL Network.
What do you know?
Has got he was involved in the interviews, but once they started narrowing the field down, he really didn't have a say.
Sure. NFL Network.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, that could be, it could be a few things. I don't know, like the Bills being self-conscious about looking like they made the decision that their quarterback wanted, which would be met with some criticism, but also I think might be lauded by some people because who's more important than Josh Allen, right? But it also could be Allen and Allen's camp trying to sort of, this wasn't our idea.
Well, Beane, just like with the draft picks, the Bills Beane kind of wised up to this, that we're willing to admit it's probably true, and why is it a bad thing if Allen is involved in conversations about what we're doing on important decisions? But we don't want anybody to think that they're up to him, like that he could overrule or veto anything or anything like that. So everybody involved, I think, today would want to spin. And, NFL Network seems like a great place to do it. Just sort of spin like, he was around, but we didn't actually ask him who we should pick.
Right.
So that's obvious.
Yeah.
All of this is obvious, and that's what makes it so disappointing. You were willing to make this McDermott move, and some people even might still believe that it was because of just results, which I do not. I don't think I think there's evidence to the contrary. I think results is fine. A lot of people would have done this based on results. Mm-hmm. I think the Bills did it because they weren't seeing eye to eye anymore. Bean, McDermott, and Pagula, was going with Bean.
Yeah.
Because it's easier. So, because it's no more correct. It's probably less correct. Yeah. And so that's where this started. And now let's interview a bunch of people. I mean, why did they need to interview Brady at all? But they did. I don't resent his being a candidate. He was a candidate in other places too. I mean, I don't resent Baltimore. It's a good organization. They talked to him. Vegas talked to him twice. Maybe Baltimore did also. I don't resent that. But man, you had these. This is your chance to get creative, and they didn't.
Right. One piece that does give me at least, it doesn't make me like this. It makes me dislike it a little less, is hearing in the last half an hour or 20 minutes or so through Adam Schefter that Jim Leonhard is a strong candidate for defensive coordinator. Because if, I think a lot of Bills fans probably did this. I did this. Joe Brady's going to be the head coach. They're going to just keep everything else the same. Right? The Bobby Babich, just go through the staff. And, that's that has to not work, but it would have, put an exclamation point on McDermott was our problem. We carved him out. We're going to keep the rest of the band together. At least hearing that there's someone from outside the organization perceived as a front runner for one of the important jobs here, that at least takes a little of the stench off of this.
I guess.
If there's a stench at all, the whole thing just smells funny to me.
I guess it does. I heard the show prior to ours talking a lot about we have to see who the staff is first. Who cares? What is that going to do to me? What is that going to do for me? Who the quarterback's coach is now, or who the assistant offensive line coach is now? Why? How would that change anybody's opinion on this? At least for the next 8 months. And maybe there's somebody in the world who follows the Bills and thinks to themselves day to day, what's actually interesting right now is the assistant offensive line coach is doing a great job.
Well, look, you can have your fun plumbing down the tree here to the assistant to the assistants and everything. The point I'm making is defensive coordinator matters a lot, and the appearance of just keeping everyone the same would have been unavoidable if they were going to just keep the staff around. And at least if there's someone from the outside, that means maybe a different style, different players, different philosophy. That is different. If you want to tell me McDermott was my problem and then keep basically his defense in place without him here, you're going to have a hard time selling me.
But who wants to tell you that? Who wants to tell anybody? Who wants to say that Sean McDermott's defense or defensive philosophy was the problem? I mean, maybe in terms
I think the Bills want to say that.
But I don't know. I think the Bills, again, I would say that when it came to it with McDermott, they were just on a very different page. But is that because he didn't play more zone? Or is that because, of more maybe bigger things? Sure, you're right. There will be this conversation that the Bills will be different offensively. They've never been bad defensively under Sean McDermott. And who knows what Bobby Babich is really as somebody, is he somebody you can actually pinpoint? This is his philosophy, or who even knows that answers to that? On the surface, if it's different, they have to achieve to appease the fans. I mean, other than just sort of doing it anyway. Jim Leonhard, you like your own people anyway, a coach. So that tends to happen. But what does it do for me in terms of my feelings about next season? I don't know. Nothing until it comes, I think. You know what I mean? It doesn't do anything for me until it comes. And they're not going to tell you we did this to be different. right? Like, that's not something they would say. They will tell you the merits of the candidate and, why they made the decision. Brady's a terrible quote. Like, I don't know if he ever said anything interesting since he got here to the media. And so I don't know if I'm using that against him. But, I mean, McDermott wasn't great, but this guy he's going to tell you both sides. He's going to both sides every question. That's what he does. And we're going to be bored to tears by that. But that's not why you hire him or don't hire him.
No, that's right. No.
It won't be that interesting, I think, to listen to. But I don't know. That's not my problem. Well, I don't know. Am I too upset?
No, I don't think so. One of us should say, because you usually beat me to it on days like this, and we haven't had one, with a new coach for the Bills in 9 years. Like, anything can work. Yeah. Right? Like, anything can work. I don't know that Brady, this Jordan Schultz that I'm referencing, like the itemizing how he got the job, like what stood out, is like a checklist from the news conference, right? He nailed the CEO part, right?
What does that even mean?
There's the comment that being, you got to oversee the whole operation, and it's more than just calling plays, and so that's highlighted. He impressed in that area. A home run, even, I think, is the phrasing used. And then this point that I already made here about recognizing the importance of alignment between the coaching staff and the personnel, the players. Did that not come across loud and clear in the news conference? I mean, if you didn't think Pegula was upset that McDermott may have been privately critical of the roster, you missed it. Because he just went, we got practice squad guys playing. The defense of it was it wasn't the most hilarious thing from the news conference, but it was one of the most, to me, outrageous, because it was anyone objectively looking at this team knew they were down bad personnel-wise all year. And so to plant your flag on that and then now highlight that Brady recognizes how important that piece is. Oh, of course he does. Because the guy that didn't, to your satisfaction, appease you in that way just got dumped.
Yeah. I don't even know what to do with the CEO thing. Is that just going to be a talking point all through this? Like, why does your coach need to be a CEO? He's not. He's outranked by at least 2 people. So he schedules practices. He answers media questions. I mean, like, what is this? What is the CEO? What does that actually mean? Is he a good communicator? Maybe in private, he's a good communicator. I think he's probably well respected. I'm not questioning that. I'm not trying to force anything here. But why do I have a coach that needs to check CEO boxes? He's not the CEO. If he were, he'd be hiring the person for the job instead of being hired. So what is that? I mean, he's going to have large control over the roster or the lineup and the plays, not really the roster. That's somebody else's job, at least in theory. So, and that did not change at all here. Like if the Bills had hired someone else, almost anyone else, but someone with experience like Dable, maybe, although he had been here, so he's a little different. Is there a candidate that had been a coach somewhere else that got a look here? No, right? Everybody was assistants or
right.
Former Bills or both. Anthony Lynn, I guess. Anthony Lynn. But he didn't really have the status. Somebody like Tomlin or somebody like that, if they had talked to somebody like that and considered going there, what does that do for Bean? It's over. It's kind of over for Bean.
Right.
If it's not somebody that will listen to him. And, does Mike Tomlin need to listen to anybody? Does John Harbaugh? I mean, you wonder about the GM of the Giants. Because their new coach has a lot of status and might get what he wants in these moments of conflict. The Bills did very well and it's in the results, but I think, I want to say, because I'm hot, I think the Bills did very well for most of this tenure with McDermott and Bean. Really, hardly anybody ever questioned their being aligned.
Yeah.
It
was early this year that started.
Right. It was most of their entire tenure together that was just not a topic. who wants what. We would wonder sometimes, is this a McDermott pick or a B? But they never gave off any sort of indication that there was conflict. And then this year, and, give Pegula maybe enough credit to have detected what you did, which is like, why is Sean McDermott talking about Jacoby Myers every day?
If he didn't detect it, I'm sure the guy sitting next to him at last Wednesday's press conference did and mentioned it to him.
Yeah.
Like, do you hear what this guy's doing to me?
Yeah. I don't know.
He's carving me up. Subtly, slowly, but surely, he's carving me up.
Is Joe Brady good? I mean, the counter argument is, well, it's pretty much all Josh Allen. Okay. It's not Brady's fault that he's got Josh Allen, but I'm sort of nodding at that.
Right.
30 points a game and everything else, the rushing leader. I mean, Brady, I think, through McDermott, Brady led them in that direction post-Dorsey of being more physical and bigger and heavy, and they won constantly. They were successful at that, which is why it came as no surprise each of the last 2 full seasons that they would continue in that direction. And they did. But I think anybody who has not really aligned with that hates today. Because how is that changing? This is a James Cook team now still.
Right?
It's going to come down to James Cook again in 2026.
Yeah,
that's almost offensive.
I really do think today increases the likelihood that everybody lives to see a third season, and we just sort of keep going. But because the results validate it. Even this year, sure there was a step back. Sure, we had issues. It seems Sean McDermott did too, with the personnel, especially at receiver. But it worked well enough, until it didn't. And so, I don't know, we're to relitigate the last 3 years here, but, we've gone around and around about the defense in the playoffs. The offense has the ball last. They've got a chance to win these games. I think most Bills fans agreed they'd like to see the roster be in better shape. So the guy who built the roster and the guy responsible for the offense that hasn't come through with the ball in their hands at the end of 3 playoff games in a row, those are the guys that get promoted. Okay. I guess we'll see in September and see how that all goes.
Exactly.
It's why when it happened and they bungled the firing and the news conference was such a mess, I did not think they would just land on Brady because of the appearance of it's why I was shook when it happened, and I'm still shook now. Because I'm just not sure I believe in the decision-making process that's going on. It's not to say that Brady can't be successful and that they can't find a new defensive coordinator and improve on the last couple of years' results, especially in the playoffs. Jim Leonard coming from Denver, maybe there's some pixie dust on him from there. They've had a great defense last couple of years. So hopefully that works. But the whole process, to me, has been just a shell game. And that, to me, should decrease your chances of getting the result you're seeking. It doesn't have to. As I already said twice, anything can work. But we've gone from trust the process to I am terrified of the process.
We've gone from trust the process to anything can work, which is very droughty.
Right.
It's just this is Adam Krautwurst and mine, sort of buzz phrase whenever we make a bad draft pick in fantasy. Well,
maybe
anything can work. Everybody can think of, sloppy situations that ended up winning. I think probably so. Yeah. See you in September. All right, your turn. 803-0550. Today we have moved Ross Tucker to 5. Interested in his opinions, of course, and then Sal Capaccio slides in at 4, and we'll talk to Sal about today's news. Here we go. Mike Schopp and the Bulldog lines are open. Well, they were when we started. This is WGR. If you're an owner who's really not that interested in getting his hands dirty and might even know well enough to know it's a bad idea, you don't fire the general manager and do the search yourself using, McDermott and or Josh Allen to participate in the, to offer opinions. No, you don't want that. This is easier. Yeah, okay, well, maybe they didn't have good players, but the GM thinks they do, and it's easier for me if he stays and McDermott goes. Then, now I've got this wide open search. Bean doesn't have to come back on WGR after the draft to find clips of him already in 2026 that are going to stand out. Like just that clip we just played. How wide open a search. Is this too strong? What an insult to these other candidates. Wide open search, no front runner, young, old, offense, defense, we don't care. And you've got guys here that, seem like pretty hot items in some cases. And the morning after finishing the interviews, you're done. Yeah, we're going to keep it. We're going to promote from within. Who wanted this outcome? Who wanted this outcome? You don't have to tell me that the Bills' offense has been really good. I know.
Right.
Who wanted this outcome? Anybody? Who was rooting for Joe Brady?
Maybe Josh Allen.
Well, maybe. He probably didn't hate the idea. He also doesn't have to do any lifting because it's not his decision. He probably will want to disown any responsibility in the decision.
That's already happening this afternoon.
Yeah, what do you know?
There's Peter Schrager from NFL Network.
Yeah, what do you know?
Has got he was involved in the interviews, but once they started narrowing the field down, he really didn't have a say.
Sure. NFL Network.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, that could be, it could be a few things. I don't know, like the Bills being self-conscious about looking like they made the decision that their quarterback wanted, which would be met with some criticism, but also I think might be lauded by some people because who's more important than Josh Allen, right? But it also could be Allen and Allen's camp trying to sort of, this wasn't our idea.
Well, Bean, just like with the draft picks, the Bills Bean kind of wised up to this, that we're willing to admit it's probably true, and why is it a bad thing if Allen is involved in conversations about what we're doing on important decisions? But we don't want anybody to think that they're up to him, like that he could overrule or veto anything or anything like that. So everybody involved, I think, today would want to spin, and NFL Network seems like a great place to do it. Just sort of spin like, he was around, but we didn't actually ask him who we should pick.
Right.
So that's obvious.
Yeah.
All of this is obvious, and that's what makes it so disappointing. You were willing to make this McDermott move, and some people even might still believe that it was because of just results, which I do not. I don't think there's I think there's evidence to the contrary. I think results is fine. A lot of people would have done this based on results. Mm-hmm. I think the Bills did it because they weren't seeing eye to eye anymore. Bean, McDermott, and Pagula, is going with Bean.
Yeah.
Because it's easier. So, because it's no more correct. It's probably less correct. Yeah. And so that's where this started. And now interview a bunch of people. Why did they need to interview Brady at all? But they did. I don't resent his being a candidate. He was a candidate in other places, too. I don't resent Baltimore. It's a good.
We've been living in sin so long, all the feels are gone. Fellas,
This is a bigger job than just a play caller and a schemer. I think we've seen where guys have been excellent play callers, but they got to the head coach seat and they couldn't handle the adversity, the conflict management, all the things that it's a CEO job. It really is. A lot of your time as a head coach or a GM get taken away from me scouting, watching players, or a coach in there scheming X's and O's. So we got to make sure we get the leadership, the CEO part.
Okay. I might say that a lot. I already am. You even said it once. One of your takes, you got to that same exact sounding okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Brandon Bean there. We'll get to your calls here at 803-0550. Joe Brady. I have 21. This is the 21st coach. Different coach in Bill's history. That includes the interim guys, a couple guys who coached only one game or a few.
I think the list of 17 doesn't include those guys, I'm guessing, like Perry Fuel, Anthony Lynn. That's just a guess on my part.
I'm not even sure why it wouldn't, but yeah, okay, well, somebody else can count, I guess. 803-0550.
I did see Sal earlier say 21. So like,
Wikipedia,
yeah,
21.
Right, 21. And
that does not count the coaches who had 2 terms. Saban, Harvey Johnson had 2 terms. They're not being double counted.
Okay.
21 different men have been the head coach of the Bills.
Right.
Trevor is next. Hi, Trevor.
Hi, guys. I appreciate you taking my call. Just wanted to talk about everything that happened. They were talking about in the press conference, like the proverbial playoff wall, and you should have been in the locker room after the game. Well, Joe Brady was in that locker room, and he's been a part of that proverbial playoff wall for the last however many years we couldn't get through. I'm optimistic, but I just don't see how things can be good going forward with.
That doesn't sound very optimistic to me, Trevor.
Well,
how is that optimistic? I don't see how this can work. Is optimistic?
Well, listen, it can work, but it's just that I just don't understand how they could, be in the locker room saying that when he was a part of all that. So that's just the part that I had a hard time understanding. That's all.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, me too. Everybody raise your hands, honk your horns. Careful, 10-2. It's snowing again.
Because it's just a talking point.
Yeah.
Enough with the locker room scene in Denver. It's just a talking point. He didn't even need it. It might not have been disingenuous, but you didn't even need it, really. And it's just, there's no real need to connect dots like this. This was easy. Firing McDermott was something he felt he had to do, and he wasn't willing to fire the GM instead. So then we're there, and now after this so-called, it's like listening to Russ Brandon, this so-called wide open, robust search, whatever, it ends up on the top assistant. It's safe. It's the safest path. Peter is next. Hi, Peter.
Hope you guys are doing well. What really concerns me about Joe Brady, I mean, he's in now, so we can spend the next 7-8 months picking apart his body of work. But from what I've seen, his grasp of the situation or lack thereof, just of situational football, there are examples all over the place. But I'll give you one glaring example of what I think is his lack of situational awareness. When you look in the Denver game, Buffalo's most important game of the year, after Deion Walker intercepted Bo Nix, there was a third quarter right after Buffalo cut the score to 23-17. They're in Denver territory. That situation got all the momentum, the sideline screaming, sudden change. You get the offense out there, and you throw a 5-yard loss, bubble screen for a loss. Then the very next play, then you go down towards the end zone with Josh Allen on his back foot, he throws an interception. You in that situation, when you have momentum, you're in the opponent's territory, you go for the end zone right away, not a 5-yard bubble screen for a loss. That's situational football. And a head coach's world is all about situations. Fourth down calls, every call within 2 minutes in each half, timeouts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So he wasn't ready for the moment. It was the moment for the Bills to take the game over.
Well, they threw down the field on the second play, not the first, though, but it was the second play. That's not good enough? I mean, the interception was a deep ball.
The interception was a deep ball, but I'm talking now, that one play after the sudden change, the one play is where you continue with that momentum.
All right. Well, I'm just saying it was the second.
That concerns me about him.
It wasn't the actual first, but it was the second, at least. They didn't just run Cook, 3 times or anything like that. So, I don't know. It's fine. Jarrett is next. Hi, Jarrett.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Terrible.
Yeah, Bulldog, you're not you being not sure in the decision making process. You're kind of valid there. Just go check out the team playing down by Canal Side. And I figured interviewing Brady was honestly just a formality. I kept telling myself, like, no, they wouldn't do that. And,
Right. Yep.
and, there's almost 3 seasons worth of proof to why he wouldn't have been the right guy, but I guess that's not what they've seen. Not really. I don't really pay attention to too many coaching searches around the league. But I started getting worried when I was hearing that, McDaniel and Rivers withdrew. I know those were 2 out of the box candidates anyways, but hearing somebody withdraw from being a head coach of Josh Allen in a brand new stadium, that was worrisome to me. And just wanted to know if you guys have ever noticed that with other head coaching searches.
Sure. McDaniel himself also withdrew from consideration in Cleveland. So, I mean, maybe you're not in great company there.
So did Grant Udinski, who did not withdraw from this job.
Right. That's right. Yeah, I don't know what to make of that. I also did not think they would. We already said it at the outset of the show. I was on in Toronto this morning, and one of the hosts said, I keep hearing about Joe Brady. I'm like, I just don't see it. So I was not expecting it either because of the optics. I just thought it would be too close to what you wanted to change about yourself. And so, I don't know, I have a hard time believing that Joe Brady's going to reinvent how he was going about things. I think he checked whatever boxes they needed checked, he checked. And maybe he was savvy enough and smart enough to just lean that way and get the job. So,
Smart.
Yeah, I guess. But the whole way it all has happened is sort of freaking me out.
He could hire an offensive coordinator, right? He will.
Sure, I would expect he will, yeah. And then we'll have a debate about who, sort of like McDermott was with, Leslie Frazier and or Bobby Babich, like who's calling the plays actually, right?
McDermott traded off with Babich.
So, sure. I mean, maybe you get Davis Webb as your offensive coordinator. I don't know, like that, and that's a head coaching candidate. Like that would increase your brain power. Like, I would welcome that. That's why, you're hot about, the staff and the CEO stuff. The staff will buffer this to some extent, for me even. But I still think the whole process was sloppy.
I think there are maybe 2 assistant positions that rate. That's what I'm saying is
coordinators.
The idea that you would have to know who all the assistants are going to be before you could actually weigh in on this is nonsense to me. Like, because who even knows who these other assistants are? Diehards know some of them. Nobody knows all of them. Like, why do I need to wait on who the special teams coordinator is going to be to decide whether this is a good move? Like, I just don't think hardly anybody sees this that way. AJ is next. Hi, AJ.
Hey, thanks for having me on. So, I mean, I guess I was going to start a little bit with what the first caller was saying, which, first off, it just blows my mind that this is the direction that we went. I mean, you have the owner come out and say that, he just felt it in the locker room. It had to be done. And I agreed with that. I wanted McDermott gone for a couple of years now, and I think we've done it too late. But anyways, you go and you make this decision, but then all of a sudden now the answer is found within that locker room that you said was so broken and needed to be, restored. I can't understand how you go this route when you have all these other people out there that show a lot of promise, like Udinski and Kubiak, and there's a bunch of young names where you bring them in and it's a full reset. To me, this screams we hired Brady out of fear and regret, because you go and fire McDermott and now it's like, oh wait, well, the players are mad. well, we got to have continuity, or we still have to make a Super Bowl next year. So you go and just hire Brady out of fear of the unknown. And it's like you need to embrace the unknown right now. Like, you have Josh Allen, the best player in the league. What are you so afraid of? The offense will work with him. You got to just find ways to take it to the next level. And I don't think that keeping the same guy is going to take it to the next level. Like, what are we doing? And, just to rattle off a few names, talking about promoting a coordinator to head coach, you've got guys like Brian Schottenheimer, who this year had a losing record. Guarantee he's gone next year if they don't make the playoffs. Gerard Mayo, that worked out great. Let's wonder how the Patriots are doing this year now that they fired him. You got, Ben McAdoo was hired within. He had a losing record, was gone within a year and a half. You had Antonio Pierce. He was gone after a year. Freddie Kitchens. I mean, you could go on and on. All these coordinators that are promoted from within fail.
Okay.
Yeah. So, that's my take. I just think it's ridiculous that we did this move when there's young offensive minds out there that can bring something different to this team, and we chose to stick with the same.
I largely agree. I agree with the vast majority of what you said. There must be assistants that were promoted that did well.
I'm glad I caught the from within part the second time through, because I missed it the first time. I was ready to jump on, like, you're not going to mention Liam Cohen or Ben Johnson or any of the other different scenario. Those
that's
are
what
from
he's
outside.
saying he wishes the Bills would have done.
Exactly. Yeah, rubber stamp on that.
George Seifert, maybe, was an assistant to Walsh. So it's not 100%, but I agree with a lot of it. I think fear, I was ready to say it. I think they might have been afraid to do something else, which is a lot of just newness and less confidence in the new person, possibly someone very young, although Brady is not old at 36.
Who might be prepared to challenge your roster building.
Or just
and maybe that's called for, right?
Not sound like you want the person to sound if you want them to sort of be an overall manager type, like McDermott was. It's almost like they're describing how they want someone to be like McDermott was. The job is much more than calling plays. Sure it is, I guess. I just can't. I can't fully buy into that. Yeah, of course, every job is more than a certain thing, but really. Anyway, we'll talk to Sal at 4. Ross Tucker moves to 5 today. The Sabres. Did they at least ask you one Sabres question when you were on?
Oh, yeah. We opened up with Sabres.
Good.
I had to sort of push them to get to the Bills.
Good.
Yeah.
That's called for.
Yeah.
Although Toronto, they would do that. If the Sabres were in Toronto, they would do that no matter what the Sabres record was.
I think so.
But, I've done a couple hits in Canada, and they want to talk about the Sabres. So, Good. We should make time to do it.
I wanted to talk about the Sabres today.
Yeah, you were all ready to do it.
I was all ready to do a Sabres show.
I was all ready to be at the curling.
Yep.
We both would have been. This is fine, too, but we would have been happy in those alternate realities. Sal at 4, Ross Tucker at 5, pregame Sabres at Leafs at 6. Mike Schopp and the Bulldog here, WGR. To him. Vegas talked to him twice. Maybe Baltimore did also. Like, I don't resent that, but man, like, you had these. This is your chance to get creative, and they didn't.
Right. One piece that does give me at least, it doesn't make me like this. It makes me dislike it a little less. Is hearing in the last half an hour or 20 minutes or so through Adam Schefter that Jim Leonard is a strong candidate for defensive coordinator. Because if, like, I think a lot of Bills fans probably did this. I did this. Joe Brady's going to be the head coach. They're going to just keep everything else the same. Right? The Bobby Babich, like, just go through the staff. And, that's that has to not work, but it would have, put an exclamation point on McDermott was our problem. We carved him out. We're going to keep the rest of the band together. At least hearing that there's someone from outside the organization perceived as a front runner for one of the important jobs here, that at least takes a little of the stench off of this.
I guess.
If there's a stench at all, the whole thing just smells funny to me.
I guess it does. I heard the show prior to ours talking a lot about we have to see who the staff is first. Who cares? But what is that going to do to me? What is that going to do for me, like who the quarterback's coach is now or who the assistant offensive line coach is now? How would that change anybody's opinion on this? At least, for the next 8 months. And maybe there's somebody in the world who follows the Bills and thinks to themselves day to day, what's actually interesting right now is the assistant offensive line coach is doing a great job.
Well, look, you can have your fun plumbing down the tree here to the assistant to the assistants and everything. The point I'm making is defensive coordinator matters a lot, and the appearance of just keeping everyone the same would have been unavoidable if they were going to just keep the staff around. And at least if there's someone from the outside, that means maybe a different style, different players, different philosophy. That is different. Like if you want to tell me McDermott was my problem and then keep basically his defense in place without him here, you're going to have a hard time selling me.
But who wants to tell you that? Who wants to tell anybody? Who wants to say that Sean McDermott's defense or defensive philosophy was the problem? I mean, maybe in terms
I think the Bills want to say that.
But I don't know. I think the Bills, again, I would say that when it came to it with McDermott, they were just on a very different page. But is that because he didn't play more zone? Or is that because, of more maybe bigger things? Like, sure, you're right. There will be this conversation that the Bills will be different offensively. They've never been bad defensively under Sean McDermott. And who knows what Bobby Babich is really as somebody, is he somebody you can actually pinpoint? Like this is his philosophy or who even knows that answers to that? On the surface, if it's different, they have to achieve to appease the fans. I mean, other than just sort of doing it anyway. Jim Leonard, you like your own people anyway, a coach. So that tends to happen. But what does it do for me in terms of my feelings about next season? I don't know. Nothing until it comes, I think. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't do anything for me until it comes. And they're not going to tell you, we did this to be different, right? Like, that's not something they would say. They will tell you the merits of the candidate and, why they made the decision. Brady's a terrible quote. Like, I don't know if he ever said anything interesting since he got here to the media. And so, Up at 4. Bulldog, you're on Twitter.
Sure. I'm looking at it right now, as a matter of fact. What do you want to know?
Is a tweet tagging you of an unfunny fake trade just a mute, or is that a downright block? I don't block.
I almost never block
used to, but
because I don't want to give. I'd rather the mute is more like they don't know what's happening. They don't know that I'm not ever going to see their crap again.
There are lines though.
The block is reserved. I really do think for anything like you say something really vulgar and insulting about my family.
Oh.
Not even just me. Like whatever. I don't even care that much. That might be a mute. But if you get into my kids or my wife,
there's a serious line there.
That's a block.
Okay. So
that's it.
I just think like pretending that there's a trade when you're just like a fan and tagging a bunch of people is so unfunny and useless that I kind of want to call that a block, but
yeah.
All right, just a mute then. We'll just go with mute. I'll play the safe. I'll go the safe route, just like, well, happens in other situations. Jeff is next. Hi, Jeff.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. As the owner of our two sports teams, I have never been impressed with Pegula. There's never been a time that I've said, "Wow, he nailed that," or he really knew how to put that into words or something. I mean, starting out with the whole, we're going to give them the tools to get the job done, and then you listen to GR and Rob Ray and Paul Hamilton are like, well, I'm sure everybody regrets those words the minute they came out of his mouth.
That wasn't Pegula, but okay. That was the previous ownership, but
got it. But just the drought. Clearly he doesn't embarrass that easy. And then he comes out and says that it was a catch in Denver, but then I'm firing him because of that game. That's the sole reason. And then to send out a PDF and promote Bean at the same time at the same document that you're firing McDermott. But I mean, I'm actually fearful today about this decision. I don't care. I don't agree with Brady's play calling most of the time. I'm not a fan of his. He would have been my last choice. But this just reeks of we need somebody to co-sign our dysfunction, and who's going to co-sign it quicker and more readily than Brady, somebody in-house. I mean, this should have been the plum job. If you would have told people before the playoffs that the Buffalo Bills job would be open, or what job would be the best job in sports or in pro football right now. You have a new $1 billion stadium opening in 3 or 4 months. You have Josh Allen as your quarterback. You have a playoff, Super Bowl window here, and we're promoting Joe Brady as our head coach. And that was done out of fear. It's because they screwed this thing up. And how can you say I want a fresh start and we need to reset all this? This is a great opportunity for newness. And then bring in this guy. Or no, don't even bring him in. Keep him. It's not a good overall sign, keeping the names and the faces out of it. Brady, and this just reeks of how it was done. And I think it was done out of fear, and it's to cover their own ass. And that's really pathetic.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Randy's next. Hi.
Gentlemen, I just got to say, I was so happy when I heard the news that I'm ready to put on a pair of shorts and grill some burgers outside. I love the promotion of Brady. I'm all for it. And this is the analogy I'm going to use. And, Mike, I think you're going to like this. McDermott's firing is like our father taking a permanent vacation. We had some fun times, but he's gone forever. And now, what does Mom do to make everything better? She brings stepdad in, and stepdad makes everything good. He fills the void. He takes us to Disney World, and that's exactly what Brady's going to do. He's going to take us to SoFi Stadium next year. We're going all the way. Love the move. Let's go Bills. Go Sabres tonight.
What about me?
What about you?
That made him think I would especially like.
What are you supposed
Dad
to love?
Dies, and then like what about how did I give off any impression in my entire life that would be sort of like my speed?
And just annoying all my family history, too. I mean, I feel shunned.
Maybe it was Disney. Mentioning Disney that did it.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, it's good to have one person call in that is happy.
Enjoy those burgers.
And today is not a shorts day for me. I love my shorts days, but, I wonder even about Ross. He'll be on later. Come on, Ross. You're not wearing shorts today, right? It's brutal out. Even where he lives. It's pretty bad.
I believe so, yeah.
We can find out. Sal Capaccio next. Ross moves to 5. Mike Schopp and the Bulldog, WGR.
We've been living in sin so long, all the feels are gone. stopped me on the street last night. Said everything's alright. Roller coaster, make it through the day upright. It seems your meal ticket is gone, but life goes on. I could never imagine something better. Yeah, right. Now you're cooking on high heat in the middle of the street. Roller coaster, take me to a better time. Let's go. All sing your high line with the roller coaster of life. Yeah. It's time to all choose your timeline on the roller coaster of life. You seem to easily forget how to place your bet. When everyday life gets you down, you gotta steal the crown. Got to own it. Don't bitch and moan about it, please. God forbid you scrape your knees, and it's nothing to sneeze at. Oh, I've told you over and over again. You gotta get both hands around it and make your own plans. Roller coaster, it's taking over, it's about time. Oh, all sing your high line on the roller coaster of life. You've got to all choose your timeline with the roller coaster of life. I want to go down the rabbit hole, down the rabbit hole of life. And now it's about to leave. Oh, roller coaster.
The Buffalo Bills have their head coach, and after 9 interviews, it comes from within. Offensive coordinator Joe Brady gets the promotion to the big chair. Brady has been with the Bills since 2022, first serving as the team's quarterback coach before being promoted to offensive coordinator, the role he has held since midway through the 2023 season. Nothing yet on when Brady will speak with the media. When that is announced, you can find that information right here on WGR. But in the early hours, we are now starting to find out who could be part of Brady's staff. Adam Schefter reporting that Denver defensive pass game coordinator Jim Leonhard is expected to be a leading candidate for the Bills' defensive coordinator position. For more on Brady getting hired by the Bills as their next head coach and the Leonhard report, Sal Capaccio does have pieces up at our website, WGR550.com. Also, stay tuned. Sal's going to join the show next. Some other notes from around the league. Brian Daboll heading to Tennessee to be their offensive coordinator. Daboll was considered a finalist for the Bills' head coaching position. The Jets are moving on from offensive coordinator Tanner Engstrand after just one season. And the Steelers officially have named Mike McCarthy their next head coach. He also spoke with the media earlier today. To the Sabres, they are in action tonight. They are just north of the border. They take on Toronto. Puck drop at 7, pregame at 6, both, of course, right here on WGR. And then 9 other games tonight across the league. And some matchups to keep an eye on include Montreal hosting Las Vegas. Detroit has the Kings in town. The Bruins, they host Nashville. In Florida, they play host to Utah. All 4 of those games also get going just after 7. That's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Update. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of being your hometown dealership. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
Well, we've talked to Sal so many times, and almost every day since the Denver loss. And as recently as yesterday, we're kind of, as a group, kind of dismissive of the idea that this could happen. One thing that was also brought up yesterday was Adam Schefter reporting that he wouldn't be surprised if all the openings were filled by Wednesday, so tomorrow. And the Bills couldn't wait. Joe Brady had interviewed in other places, and maybe they felt like they had to make this move to keep him. Maybe it was like that. Either way, he's hired, and here is Sal Capaccio to join us to talk about it today. I mean, Sal, is that pretty much on point, how you felt yesterday, and then how this news sort of hit you?
Yeah, a couple things here. First of all, we've talked about it. You guys mentioned it yesterday, what Schefter said about, these jobs being filled maybe by today, and I thought that was a little presumptuous, maybe a little ambitious, that it just didn't seem like it was going that way. Also said, hey, you never know. They like a guy, they're going to move fast. If they really identify a guy, they're going to move fast because you got to start getting everything in order. You got to get your assistants in order. You got to start lining things up. You just have to do that. But it felt to me like this was something that was going to be taking a little while longer. And then you still had the Kubiak thing hanging out there, which was, are they going to wait 2 weeks? Are they not going to wait 2 weeks? Even if they felt they couldn't wait 2 weeks, I thought maybe today would have been a little too early. But obviously, they identified Joe Brady early on in the process. He had an interview early. He's the first interview they had. He's been in the building. They felt comfortable enough with him. When I was on the radio today, ironically, you were on with Carlo earlier today, Bulldog, and then he was on with me when the news broke. Actually,
okay, wow.
We were
Did he take a victory lap? Because I sort of talked him down, like I don't think it's going to happen, dude. I don't know, whatever.
I know, amazing. We were actually talking Sabres Leafs right around 11:40, and the news broke right at that time. So we pivoted, and yeah, I was surprised. I was surprised, and then just the name itself. Surprised by that. I was surprised by the timing, and I was surprised that the Bills did this. And the biggest reason why is because of what I've said to you guys, which is if you fire Sean McDermott and say the reason is because you've hit a proverbial playoff wall, as Terry Pegula put it, then it always felt to me like they'd be going in a different direction, in a different voice than somebody who was in a leadership position on Sean McDermott's staff who's been a part of that proverbial playoff wall. All of that said, you always leave open the possibility of, hey, if Josh Allen really likes the guy and he endorses him, that's a big-time check on his box. And obviously, if they want to keep the continuity of what they had on the offensive side of the ball and they're late in the process and they want to make sure they keep some of these coaches in the building and there's guys taking jobs everywhere, who are you going to get? All those things are baked into it. And then I think the final thing for me is, looking back on it, this is clearly another sign of it really kind of came down to me to looking at it. It's more of a Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane maybe just couldn't continue their relationship anymore, so we had to do something different.
And this is the easiest and safest path, given that. is you still like your team, you like your offense, and you want to have continuity, but you can't have Sean McDermott around anymore. Sal, I mean, you've known Brady for years and Allen, and I'm not trying to pin you on to what extent Allen had an important voice in this decision, but he had a voice. We know that. They've said as much. With Brian Daboll as a candidate being interviewed, and Davis Webb, and anybody else you want here that he might have some connection to, would it surprise you if you found out that Allen was a vote for Brady given the options?
I guess. I mean, from the standpoint of like ranking them, maybe. You know what I mean? Like if you say to me, would he vote for him over Brian Daboll? But I mean, I think Josh really loves Brian Daboll. And I think Josh actually really loves Joe Brady in their relationship. Like you might be splitting hairs there. Maybe I know he's really close with Brian Daboll. So, yeah, I mean, maybe he'd rank Brian Daboll one. Look, there's a lot of nuance there to Brian Daboll's career, though, versus Joe Brady's, right? And what Brian Daboll's looking for as well. And, you know, even if Josh said, yeah, I prefer Brian, just hypothetically speaking, well, what does that look like when you go to Brian Daboll and say, well, what does your staff look like? And, you know, maybe they're not totally in line with his vision, and he's been here before. You know, there's a lot of things there where Joe is, hey, I'm right here. I'm ready for this. I've never done it before, but I know I can do it, and I want to keep the train moving, right? So I think there's a lot of things there. I would say it this way, Mike. I don't know who he would rank higher. Obviously, I can't say that. I don't think that Josh Allen would fight against Joe Brady being the head coach.
Okay. And then there's Webb, who we've heard all along Allen is close to, and he might still end up here. Would you say?
Sure. He could. I mean, we'll see what happens now. Look, I would assume, just sitting here talking to you guys, that Joe Brady's going to call plays next year, right? So you could bring Davis Webb in or anyone else and say, you're the offensive coordinator. What does that mean? That means you're running the offense, but you're not calling plays. And obviously that's something like Grant Udinski in Jacksonville, right? And that's fine for a lot of guys. Is that something that Davis Webb would want? Is that something that is that someone Joe Brady would want to work with? They have worked together in the past. If he does want to work with them, bring him here. It is a bump in title, but it's not calling plays. So from that standpoint, then you'd have to say, okay, let's just go down that road. If you talk to Davis Webb, would he say, you know what? That's a really great opportunity. I got a good thing here, though, that I'm working on with Sean Payton, where I got a really good gig, and he's a great offensive mind, and I'd rather just stay in this role, which is kind of the same thing anyway. But yeah, it would be a bump in title, and it is possible. There's no doubt about that. I think it's notable that Ronald Curry is on the staff as the quarterbacks coach for the Bills, and he and Joe go back to their New Orleans Saints days together, right? So I mean, if you're looking for guys or who's going to get titles and who's going to take roles, that would be a guy that I think would be in some sort of way, plans with Joe, because I think, if I remember correctly, Joe had a bit of a part in bringing him to Buffalo.
Do you feel like you have a handle on, after 2+ seasons of Brady as the offensive coordinator, what would you expect it to be more of the same, or do you think there was some shadow cast by McDermott here? Like, has Brady been able to be his full self? As I think a lot of fans are wondering if, all the criticism of the bubble screens, for example, to pick one play that I somehow worked my way into becoming like the public defender of the bubble screen, because it doesn't always fail to work. Like it sounds when fans get so mad about it, they just remember the ones that didn't go anywhere and forget about the ones that gained 15 yards. But anyway, like, do you think... Because my biggest hang-up here is the bit where Jordan Schultz reports that it was important that Brady recognized the importance of being aligned with personnel, right? That the coaching staff be aligned with the front office on personnel. Because one of the biggest things I was hoping for was more challenging of the personnel and maybe getting whoever runs the offense some different personnel, maybe some more talent at receiver, for example, not to bang the familiar note on the same drum over and over again. Like, I just wonder how much Brady was working with what he had, and therefore we're assuming his philosophy is what we've seen, and maybe it's just adapting to what he had at his disposal.
It's a great question. I wondered it myself. I've always long believed, just through talking with people and knowing things, that Sean McDermott has not been the meddler that a lot of people believe that he is, right, on the offensive side. He does have a vision. He does have a philosophy There's no doubt. And I think that anybody he brings in, anybody he hires, and the people he talks to, they're in going into a game, they're going to have that as part of their preparation, for games and what they're doing. There's no doubt about that. But it's not like Sean McDermott was calling the plays or telling Joe Brady in a game plan, make sure you just don't, throw the ball down the field more than 15 yards. I've never believed that. I don't believe that. So I'm not going to sit here and say that and change course. I do think, though, that Joe Brady was obviously running an offense in Sean McDermott's vision of what the overall team should look like, which is we're going to be really good up front. We got to protect our quarterback and run the football really well. And I do remember the one thing that McDermott said at the owners' meetings last year, which always stood out to me this year as the season going on. He would talk a lot about how defenses have changed so much, and this is right too. It's not even inaccurate. It's true. It's accurate. The defenses have changed so much to not allow the big play that you got to get the ball in the hands of people, and there's a lot of ways to get the ball down the field. You don't just have to throw it over the top of them. Like McDermott would say that, and then look what happened with the defense. I mean, the offense, right? Over the last couple of years. So I do think Joe was operating under that construct, which is, look, this is the way we need to live. Like, yeah, we got this big arm quarterback, but teams are not allowing us to do this. So we need to run the ball really well, and you can force them up, and then maybe you could take your shots. We need to get the ball into our playmakers' hands and block and have good receivers who can block. And that doesn't sound sexy to a lot of people. So I don't think that Joe Brady was just doing everything Sean McDermott told him to do. No, I do not think that. I do think Joe Brady was operating under the construct of what philosophy and vision Sean McDermott had to run a football team, and then the personnel that he had to go and run it with.
With Sal Capaccio, this CEO point, it doesn't do a lot for me. I mean, of course, like almost any job, it's more than just what's obvious that goes into the job. But I don't need the head coach of the Bills to be a CEO. I've got one of those, and he works for that guy, or the GM even. But, if it may be more just a metaphor for leadership and organizational stuff. How does Brady strike you as somebody that can run this? Has he given off enough of an impression to make you feel a certain way about how he'll go over as a head coach, as a leader?
Well, first of all, Mike, I think you're taking that a little too literally, the CEO, because yes, of course there's a CEO of the team, right? But these are different roles. There's a front office and there's a coaching staff. He's the CEO of the coaching staff. The front office has its own CEO. It has its own financial advisor and general manager. These are two. That's the front office part of it, and then there's the business side, and of course then there's the football coaching side. And I don't mind when I hear it because I'm around it every day, football. And I do think that a head coach, as I've always thought, it doesn't matter if you're offense or defense or special teams. You got to be a leader, and you do need to be a CEO type. A CEO type is what he said, not a CEO, I believe. Could be wrong. I thought he said type. Is someone who can delegate, understand what different people's strengths are, different roles are in your organization, and put those people in proper places to succeed. What Brandon Beane said was, we're not just looking for a play caller, because you can get a play caller on your staff. That's not the person running the operation. Your head coach coaches the coaches. I just said Sean McDermott had a vision for the team. He had hey, this is how we want to play football and win in the NFL. So that's got to be what Joe Brady does now. So to me, I understand the CEO part of it when you say that, when Brandon Beane does, because that's what that means.
All good points.
Right?
I understand. I'll move off it. I understand
completely.
I'll move off it.
Okay. That said, Joe Brady is a really high-energy guy. I think it's one of the big reasons why he got this job in the first place as offensive coordinator. I remember talking with McDermott at the owners' meetings again a couple of years ago, and, him just mentioning how important, he didn't say this wasn't like anything even that he didn't say to other people down the line and publicly, which is like Joe's energy, bringing that energy. Remember when he would talk about Dorsey and he would talk about Brady, right? And that was a big deal to him. I think, Josh Allen and the personality that he brings, that he would bring that out in him. As far as being the actual CEO, I need to see it. I have not seen that role in him yet because he was working under what I think was a good type of CEO type of coach, which is Sean McDermott. So he hasn't been able to have that type of role other than running the offense. So I could sit here and say I'm skeptical, but at the same time, I think his personality would lead to people following him. You know what I mean? Because I think he's high energy. He's positive. I think that's a good trait in a lot of people. But you know what you really got to do when you're a head coach, when you're a CEO? When things don't go right, when you're going through tough times. That's when your mettle is tested. That's when your hard conversations have to be had. And I'll say something about Sean McDermott that I think I've always appreciated and right. And Eric Wood would say it this way, and he was right. Sean was very comfortable having uncomfortable conversations. And that, to me, your head coach has to be comfortable having uncomfortable conversations. And when you are a high-energy, positive guy, what happens when you need to have those conversations with people? That's what I need to see.
Sal Capaccio on the Western Hotline with us for a few more minutes here on a day the Bills make official their hire of Joe Brady, their former offensive coordinator, as the 21st head coach in history. So what are we waiting for now, Sal? Coordinators, I think hearing just before we started that Jim Leonard would be a strong candidate from Denver got my attention. I wonder if you can maybe just go to Denver for everything. Go get your OC there in Davis Webb,
sure.
And maybe your DC in Jim Leonard. Like that's enough new on defense. Like the idea of, as we're starting the show today, thinking of Brady being hired, and if they're just going to keep a lot of the same, like if Bobby Babich were to stay as the coordinator, I don't know that I'd be consolable at this point. Like I do think it matters that they turn some things over because of the point we started with and that we talked about yesterday, right? Like if you want something new to help you get over the wall, keeping too much the same or everything the same except for the head coach isn't really going to get it done. So I'm really paying attention to what they're going to do with the OC and DC positions.
Yeah, for sure. These are really important hires. They're especially important for a first-time head coach. You want to surround yourself with people that really you can lean on, that you can trust. That's a big, big thing in this business. You're getting in there your first time. Are you bringing in people who are looking to overstep you and on top of you and take advantage of you? Are you looking for loyal people? Can you get loyal people who are willing to go along with your vision and really be understanding of what you're trying to do? Like that's important here. When Sean McDermott was hired in 2017. He couldn't get everybody he wanted right away because guys were under contract, much like maybe Joe Brady here. So what did he do, though? He had the oldest staff in the league. He had Leslie Frazier. He had Rick Dennison, right? Like he was hiring guys that are like, oh, my God, these guys have been around a long time in the league. Why did he do that? He needed experienced people. Now, Joe Brady, his first target here, it appears, is not that. It's going to be Jim Leonard. And I think that's very fascinating to me, which tells me he's looking for a bam, right away, fresh new approach, fresh new eyes to come in here. A guy that's he didn't play in the league too long ago, right? Yeah, he's been at the college level. He's been at the NFL level. I also find it interesting. He just played this team twice. The last two playoffs, they played this team. I don't think that you hire somebody from a team that you just prepared 2 playoff games for if you didn't think in your mind, you know what? That was tough going against that club. You know what I mean? Preparing for the team and all the things you think about. Like if you think, oh my God, that was easy. That guy was easy to prepare for. I don't think you go out and hire him. So that's where number one that I find really fascinating about this hire. Jim Leonard, of course, played safety for the Bills, a couple of different stints. He played under Rex Ryan, very important here, I think, both in Baltimore and at the Jets. I think he's like a Ryan disciple. And then Vance Joseph. And what do those two guys have in common? Very, very aggressive pass rush approach to their defenses. And I think maybe this is a very early indication that Joe Brady and Brandon Beane in their discussions are like, how do we fix the pass rush? I have spent resources on that side of the ball. What do we do to do it? And Joe Brady looks around and goes, I'm going to tell you who I've prepared against the last 2 years, Vance Joseph and Jim Leonard, and he comes from Rex Ryan, and those guys get after it. And look at the sack numbers they put up over there. You want to improve the pass rush? Give me what they're doing over there. And I think that's a big key here. Let's look at the offensive side. And by the way, you're right. Bobby Babich is still right now currently the DC of the Bills. So, we'll see where that goes. Obviously, it doesn't look like that's going to happen. On the offensive side, I put it together today. I tweeted it out. There's a lot of guys who I could definitely see being retained. Kelly Skipper's been here since McDermott was hired. Rob Boris has been here since McDermott was hired. They could stay on staff. Maybe he goes out and gets somebody else. I don't know where you're going at this point to get a lot of people who are already getting jobs, but you could also retain the group that you've worked with as their boss, as the offensive coordinator.
Well, you've said it already earlier, and it's definitively my conclusion about all this with respect to McDermott's departure is that they were just not seeing eye to eye anymore. And this hire, I think, substantiates that they want to be – everybody loves continuity. The Bills have been all about it. They've been very successful as such. And this is a version of that. And it just makes you wonder how deeply rooted might McDermott's objections have been, and where do they lead? I mean, Coleman became the flashpoint at the press conference when the owner decided he needed to jump in and save Brandon Beane from a Keon Coleman question and essentially blame Coleman on McDermott and the staff. So you heard that. Do you wonder, just to say he was dissatisfied with the roster, I just wonder exactly to what extent. I mean, were there lots of players on this team that McDermott was not happy with? Who knows?
I don't know if I go that far. I mean, but clearly he was making comments publicly in the media that were totally like aimed at telling you that he was not happy in some respects with some things, right? I mean, the whole Jacoby Myers thing was kind of crazy that it just kept coming up even before they played him. And then they played him, and he comes on Friday with me. He talks in his press conference later the same day. The Jamarcus Ingram thing, like, I don't think he was very happy with that, with Darius Slay and how that went. And, like, he would make comments that got you very clearly to believe that that was happening already behind the scenes. I mean, guys, I don't think it was a secret to a lot of us, and we talked about it in ways, but it was never really outward, right? Because the way I would always phrase it, and I think I probably said this to you guys, is I think even when they had disagreements over the first 8 years, Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane always realized they were better with each other than without each other. Professionally, they worked well. They needed each other. They'd always still come to a consensus professionally on what's best for the Buffalo Bills. It just seemed like since over this past year or so, and this is the offseason too, that kind of eroded. And we talked about it a little bit here and there. It just seemed like they weren't on the same page all the time, but never to the point of having this huge you or me power struggle. But did it come down to that at the end? I'm not really sure, because it feels to me like what really happened at the end was Sean McDermott kind of just laid it out there and said, I don't have the right guys to coach, but I'm going to go out there and try and win a Super Bowl. But I'm going to let everybody know that I don't have the right guys to coach that I want. And if I don't win a Super Bowl, then so be it. You can do what you want with me. But if I win a Super Bowl, damn it, I win. Right? Like, I mean, it felt like that was going on at the end.
And that was, especially Myers, of course, really at the point. It had built to that, probably, where McDermott felt less and less hesitation.
Can I add in this in, because I don't want to forget this when you were asking me the question, Mike. I also don't think, I've been thinking back and listening and, of things that were said, and I thought this a while back a few times, and it wasn't just McDermott and Beane maybe. It seemed like that was going on with McDermott and Brady at times, where, we got too cute, right? Something like that. We didn't protect the quarterback, and like whatever he said after the Houston game led you to.
How
right?
often
like,
he got hit. Yeah.
Yes. So if you go to those little talking points, Sean McDermott is not dumb. He knows what he says he does it for a reason, right? There's a lot of times he's going to say something to intentionally say it. And I felt as the season went on that he was saying things that were also kind of indicators about what he felt about what Joe Brady was doing.
I won't disagree. Jacksonville announces Udinski is staying with the Jaguars, by the way, out of the running here. Okay, thanks, Sal. We'll talk again soon.
You got it, guys. Thanks.
That's Sal Capaccio on the Wester Hotline. His appearances are always brought to you by New York's only outlet, Liquor. When you need to stock up, it's the place to buy a case. What's your outlet? By my watch, we are at a 9th consecutive day of snow falling somewhere in the 716 area code since Sean McDermott was relieved of his duties as head coach of the Bills. It still has not stopped snowing.
No, not really. Interesting theory.
Non-stop snow.
Will it ever stop? Is what you're starting to wonder.
That's what I'm really beginning to wonder. Will we play golf in May? That's my question.
Well, at least it's warm. At least it's not
right. At least it's
horrible out.
Like single digit.
It can snow and be nice out. Yeah. A little bit nice.
That has happened.
Not the case here, though. No, it's super cold, and it is in a lot of places. 803-0550 for your calls. We'll get back to the phones next. Ross Tucker at 5 today. Sabres and Leafs pregame at 6 here on WGR. using that against him. But, I mean, McDermott wasn't great, but this guy he's going to tell you both sides. He's going to both sides every question. That's what he does. And we're going to be bored to tears by that. But that's not why you hire him or don't hire him.
No, that's right. No.
It won't be that interesting, I think, to listen to. But I don't know. That's not my problem. Well, I don't know. Am I too upset?
No, I don't think so. One of us should say, because you usually beat me to it on days like this, and we haven't had one, with a new coach for the Bills in 9 years. Like, anything can work. Right? Like, anything can work. I don't know that Brady, this Jordan Schultz that I'm referencing, like the itemizing how he got the job, like what stood out, is like a checklist from the news conference, right? He nailed the CEO part, right?
What does that even mean?
There's the comment that being, you got to oversee the whole operation, and it's more than just calling plays, and so that's highlighted. He impressed in that area. A home run, even, I think, is the phrasing used. And then this point that I already made here about recognizing the importance of alignment between the coaching staff and the personnel, the players. Did that not come across loud and clear in the news conference? I mean, if you didn't think Pegula was upset that McDermott may have been privately critical of the roster, you missed it. Because he just went, we got practice squad guys playing. The defense of it was it wasn't the most hilarious thing from the news conference, but it was one of the most, to me, outrageous, because anyone objectively looking at this team knew they were down bad personnel-wise all year. And so to plant your flag on that and then now highlight that Brady recognizes how important that piece is. Oh, of course he does. Because the guy that didn't
The Buffalo Bills have their next head coach, and it comes from within. Offensive coordinator Joe Brady gets the promotion to the big chair. Brady, of course, has been with the Bills since 2022, first serving as the team's quarterback coach before being promoted to offensive coordinator, the role he has held since midway through the 2023 season. Nothing yet on when Brady will speak with the media. When that is announced, however, you can find that information right here on WGR. And while he was just named the Bills head coach a few hours ago, there were already rumblings on who could join him for his staff. Adam Schefter reporting Denver defensive pass game coordinator Jim Leonhard is expected to be a leading candidate for the Bills defensive coordinator position. For more on Brady getting hired by the Bills and the Leonhard report, Sal Capaccio has pieces up at our website, WGR550.com. To the Sabres, they're in action tonight, and they are just north of the border. They take on Toronto. Puck drop at 7, pregame at 6. Both, of course, going to be right here on WGR. There are 9 other games tonight. Some matchups, though, to keep an eye on. Montreal hosts Las Vegas. Detroit have the Kings in town. The Bruins host Nashville. And Florida, they play host to Utah. All 4 of those games also get underway at 7. It's Paddock Chevrolet Sports Headlines. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of being your hometown dealership. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
There are certain hires in the NFL that are absolutely obvious. When the Broncos went from Nat Hackett to Sean Payton, you knew, I knew that was going to be an upgrade. When the Chargers went Brandon Staley to Jim Harbaugh, ask yourself this: is Joe Brady a better coach than Sean McDermott? A, I don't know, and B, I don't think so. That's not to say it's not going to work. But the Steelers hired Mike McCarthy. Why? Mike is a Pittsburgh guy, and it makes him comfortable. Joe Brady is hired because he makes them comfortable, and he's worked with Josh Allen.
I agree with that. Colin Cowherd. Also, he like Sean McDermott, played and coached at William and Mary.
Yeah.
Which is not a local school. But just a little trivia. Of course, Marv Levy was the head coach at one time at William and Mary also. That's probably all more of a coincidence.
And weren't Tomlin and McDermott teammates at William and Mary? Right.
Yep. Brady, who was younger, was a receiver there. William and Mary, both.
It's not William and Mary.
Ampersand, I believe, isn't it?
Is it William / Mary? No, it's William and Mary.
Yeah, I think it's an ampersand. Let's go to Les next. Hi, Les.
Hey, Schopp and Bulldog, this is Les. Thanks for taking my call.
You're welcome. Thanks for
I wanna
calling.
ask you guys how you're doing because I'm trying to be cognizant of time, so I'll be quick.
That took longer.
I'm in the minority here. I'm in the minority here. I don't know why people are mad. I'm not a homer. I've wanted McDermott gone since 13 seconds, and the last time I called in was after the Cincinnati beatdown at home. So, Bulldog, you asked earlier, could Joe Brady be his full self under Sean McDermott? I say no. Living in the South, you can tell by my voice, I'm a huge college football fan.
Mm-hmm.
Joe Brady orchestrated the 2019 LSU offense, which in my opinion was the greatest offense in college football history. They threw the ball all over the field all season long. They were unstoppable. I think with the personnel that Sean McDermott wanted, Joe Brady still put up stats. I like to tell those closest to me, numbers don't lie, people do. We've been a top 5 unit since he took over. First in EPA per play, first in scoring drive rate, first in points scored. Clint Kubiak's everybody's favorite was 14th, 18th, and 16th in respectable categories. Last 3 things I'll say and I'll hang up. The last coach, we gave up 31.5 points per game when it mattered the most on his side of the ball in the playoffs. Joe Brady, unit, scored 28.5. That should be enough to win. Allen won MVP under Brady. James Cook just won a rushing title under Brady. I think this is our Phil Jackson to Doug Collins. I think it's our Mike Shanahan to Dan Reeves. I think it's an A-plus Grand Slam hire, and hopefully be the minority to call back in a few years to say I told you so. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure. So now it's that McDermott loved the roster, or they were his players. In this construct, they were his players. Look, I think Brady, this can go either way. What chance do you have without top talent as a coach? Not a great chance. And there are surely hundreds of coaches through the years that just could not get their careers off the ground because they did not have enough talent around them. Brady is maybe the converse he has LSU. Holy cow, how could they ever lose with what he had to work with on offense? Does that mean he's bad? No, and neither does anything that people are being critical of today about, this choice. It doesn't have to mean that he's not good, but he's had it nice. And when he was in Carolina, they were terrible. Like a coach can only control so much.
Right.
And like anybody would have been, with Allen on his side, he's got a great chance. I saw today they are literally the Super Bowl favorite again, including the teams that are in the Super Bowl right now. I mean, he's got a great head start. And so would anybody else who was chosen for this job. That would have been a bigger risk by the Bills.
Right. Look, anything could work. My biggest concern here is that the Bills hired, Colin Cowherd just said it, comfortable. What made them uncomfortable in the end about Sean McDermott? That he was publicly, subtly pushing back against the roster and perhaps privately, more aggressively pushing back against the roster, against the general manager. And my biggest concern through this whole process is that they were going to land on someone who would continue to be an enabler in that respect. When I think what's called for, if you really want an honest overhaul, you want an honest new approach. Maybe overhaul is not the right word with a team that's been this close, but you want an honest assessment of where you're at. Go get someone from the outside to tell you what you're lacking, what they feel they need to make this work, even with the cheat code that is Josh Allen. And I don't want to paint Brady with a brush that he doesn't deserve right now. But to me, the optics are very hard to ignore. That they chose the comfortable route that, yeah, he can make it work. Look, he's made it work these 2 years. And if I have to come through another season with everybody eats practically on billboards around here, I mean, I don't know, just take me out back already, because it hasn't been enough. It has not been enough. And Bean is just skating. And I just hope that there's enough change in the wind here with the assistants that are going to be brought in, the coordinators, that they do take a real honest look at their process that landed them on the choices that they've made, both in the draft and in free agency, that have not moved this team forward. Like, you will hear Bean often talk about it. He did it again on Wednesday when we last heard from him. How difficult it is to navigate the salary cap when your quarterback is making X amount of dollars. Like they talk about like that's a noose around their necks to have Josh Allen as their quarterback. No, you know what your problem is? Your problem is you have the largest middle class roster maybe in the league. You got a lot of guys. There are very few guys making huge money, but you got a lot of guys making more than
they should.
Then maybe their replacements would. And I don't know how much the meter moves with the guys that are getting paid. This is Rousseau. This is Bernard.
Knox.
This is Knox. There's a lot of. They have a lot of pretty good guys that are getting paid pretty well. And I think that there's just too many of them. You know, like Bean can talk about how long ago was it that he told you he didn't want to be the Rams? You know, the Rams had one bad year since he said that. And they've been a contending team, and we're a 13-win team again this year, with the quarterback making the big money. And they found a way. And over here, I'm just protecting all my assets and, you know, making sure I don't be like them. Like what? You mean win the Super Bowl and then become like within a hair of doing it again this year? You mean them? Okay. Good example. Maybe go back to the drawing board and find a better example, if there is one.
The Browns, right? That'd be the Browns, maybe. Sorry, you could be a lot of teams. The Bills are better off than a lot of teams.
Yes.
Chris is next. Hi, Chris.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. I just wanted to weigh in here on the Brady hiring, too. And, you know, I initially admittedly wasn't terribly thrilled, but I'm trying to look at it from an objective view as best I can. If Brady were an outside hire and I would just look at the resume, I think I'd be excited about it, right? It's like, oh, MVP quarterback, rushing title, and top 5 in scoring and offense, and all those sorts of things. But then at the same time, this doesn't happen in a vacuum. And I know that he was part of this regime that we've just heard we needed change for. And I was hearing you all say, you know, that is this enough change? So I find myself conflicted between the two. And, you know, I want to say optimistic that, like, was all of that in spite of Brady or because of him? And he was, you know, making miracles happen with a subpar roster. So is there something to look forward to? But I do keep falling back on the point that you just said about, is this enough change? So I don't know. I'm not sure what your thoughts are. I guess based on what you were just saying, it sounds like maybe you're not feeling it's enough change, but that's just sort of the conflict that I'm finding myself in right now.
I think I like the thought experiment of if he were coming in from elsewhere. It just clearly remains to be seen what it's going to look like. You know, but you start with that it has a pretty good chance of looking like it's been looking. And if you hired Grant Udinsky or Clint Kubiak or someone else, who knows? And that's exciting. That doesn't mean it's better necessarily, but it's exciting. I mean, yeah, somebody else. If the Raiders had hired Brady, I think you can point to all these pros, because that's what you do as a fan. You know, you look for the positives. It hit me this morning when the news broke. It was ironic to me that just yesterday I made a point about how anytime whoever they'll hire, like I'm going to think about the positives, and that absolutely is not what I thought about today. This has been an exception for me to all these other hires. I mean, it's been a long time since the Bills did this on a permanent basis. Maybe Wade. I mean, somebody that was on their staff that moved in after the head coach departed. So I guess this is one where I'm not excited about this. I think it's safe and easy, but maybe it'll work. I mean, they have had a lot of success, and we'll see what's different next year. I think the point about the roster, though, is still going to be there. And as big of a news item as this is, what does change to their roster? There are free agents. There is, a cap challenge again this year. You're drafting late again this year. How different will the team be? If it is somewhat of a constant, Brady, then, you turn your attention over there and see, all right, well, what can they do to turn over what needs to be turned over here? We'll talk to Ross Tucker at 5. Paul Hamilton joins for Sabres pregame at 6. Sabres and Leafs tonight in Toronto. Big games. How about that? Soon it'll be big games in February.
That's right. And then the days are going to start getting longer.
Next week.
We're going to be into March and
Wait, but first they'll take 20 days off.
Yeah, there's that. There's that 3-week gap in the schedule.
They'll take 3 weeks off. What do we do then? Oh, please, Sabres, don't leave us. It changes fast. Ross coming up in 20 minutes. Mike Schopp and the Bulldog, WGR.
Hey, it's Bulldog here for Roswell Park.
Jordan Schultz reports that Brian Daboll is going to become the offensive coordinator of the Titans. There will be an offensive coordinator here. Maybe it's somebody already on the Bills' offensive staff. Maybe it's not. But somebody will at least have the title.
Right.
I would think.
Yep.
Probably. Almost definitely. Somebody will have the title.
Yep. And look, if you're like I am, I mean, I'm craving, and I was when this whole process started, and, you know, so far the first hire is not inspiring, at least in this way, outside, right? Help me get where I haven't been before. By doing what? Promoting from within? I'm not sure that really flies. So that's why it was notable to me, and I mentioned this really at the outset and then with Sal, like Jim Leonard from Denver, good. You know, if Davis Webb is prepared to be an offensive coordinator that doesn't have to call plays, if that's appealing to him, his relationship with Josh, that is another, I think, what I perceive in NFL circles to be a big-brained offensive guy. So get me as much of that as I can, and I'll feel better about the decision to hire Brady. It's very important to me that they don't just keep going with what they had minus McDermott. To me, that's not really change. I mean, it is sort of on the surface, but it's not deep. It's not any kind of an overhaul. And look, overhaul might be too strong. I don't even imply that an overhaul is called for. They have been shift. If something's going to shift, I mean, I don't know. Maybe just removing McDermott allows these guys to be their fully formed selves or something. I mean, I don't know. That's hard for me to swallow. I'm very much, maybe more than ever, because of, you know, we haven't been through this process with the Bills being good, like, ever. In my professional career, you mentioned Wade. Like, that was sort of preordained. He showed up as a defensive coordinator for the last couple of years of Marv, and everyone following the team then and covering the team then believed when Marv was ready to step aside, Wade Phillips was in waiting, was going to take over, and this is exactly what happened. The next time they looked for a coach after that, like, the drought was beginning, just about. Like, that's where we ended up living.
Yeah, Wade was the coach of the first year.
Whoever you hired as a new head coach, I wasn't all that because they weren't that close. Now they've been this close. I've never been more tuned into who is going to be hired to help this get across the finish line. It better be from outside.
The Marv to Wade transition is if this happened and Allen left too.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Because Kelly left too.
That is what happened.
When Marv left. Or the next year.
The next year.
1 year later.
Yeah.
Sorry. Still. Close enough. Todd is next. I'm saying that. Hi, Todd.
Hi, how you doing? You know, I really wanted to say is, you know, I'm really, really disappointed. You know, I really was expecting somebody else new to get in here. And, you know, I really wanted to see the OC from the Seahawks. You know, I look at it like this, is that he took an average QB in Sam Darnold, and look where they're at right now. I feel like if he would have been the head coach for Josh, he would have been – I don't think we would have possibly seen something as great as that, the possibility of that could have been. You know, I'm just really disappointed, and I don't feel like, me personally, I don't feel like Joe Brady has proven himself to be a head coach yet. But, you know, I could be wrong, but that was it.
That he hasn't earned it in so many words. Well, there are a lot of reasons why it wasn't going to end up at Clint Kubiak. The timing works against both parties in this way. It's 2 weeks before you can even do anything. So they were not likely to be willing to wait. And then, you know, even with respect to him, Udinski, the Jacksonville candidate, had a role in Darnold in Minnesota. He was an assistant, and it was there that Darnold sort of emerged. He's actually good. And I don't know if people are still convinced, but he's had a great season and is the Super Bowl MVP favorite, which is wild. Ross Tucker after the break. Sabres and Leafs tonight here on WGR.
The Buffalo Bills have their head coach, and after 9 interviews, it comes from within. Offensive coordinator Joe Brady gets the promotion to the big chair. Brady has been with the Bills since 2022, first serving as the team's quarterback coach before being promoted to offensive coordinator, the role he has held since midway through the 2023 season. And we do have an update on when Brady is going to speak. His introductory press conference will be Thursday at noon, and of course that'll be carried right here on WGR. And while it's only been a few hours since he's been named the team's head coach, there are already rumblings on who could be part of his staff. Adam Schefter earlier today reporting Denver defensive pass game coordinator Jim Leonhard is expected to be a leading candidate for the Bills' defensive coordinator position. And for more on Joe Brady getting hired to the Bills and the Leonhard report, Sal Capaccio has pieces up at our website, WGR550.com. Some other notes around the league. Brian Daboll heading to Tennessee to be their offensive coordinator. Daboll was considered a finalist for the Bills' head coaching position. The Jets, they are moving on from their offensive coordinator Tanner Engstrand after just 1 season. And the Steelers made it official today. Mike McCarthy is their head coach. He also spoke with the media today as well. To the Sabres, they're in action tonight. Pre-game coming up in about an hour for a 7 p.m. puck drop. They are just north of the border to take on Toronto today. And then 9 games tonight. Some other matchups to keep an eye on across the league. Montreal hosts Las Vegas. Detroit have the Kings in town. The Bruins host Nashville. And Florida, they play host to Utah. All 4 of those games also get underway at 7. That's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Update. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of being your hometown dealership. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
With us now is a very influential football analyst who has many times over said wonderful things about his time in Western New York. It's Ross Tucker, the host of the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, who you can check out on social media at Ross Tucker NFL. And Ross is back with another round of myfrontpagestory.com with Valentine's Day right around the corner. I didn't get to use my thing about Udinsky and the high schools from yesterday that I dug up. So Ross is on the line. Hi, Ross.
Hi, Mike. I didn't know. I'm influential? I didn't know that.
Oh, my gosh. I mean, clearly. I can't watch a game without seeing you now. There he is in Seattle.
Right.
Right there by the end zone.
Getting TV time, too.
So, why missing?
If I am go ahead. Why missing? Go ahead.
Just going to say, yesterday I found this out. We were talking about candidates for the Bills job, which has since been filled. Grant Udinsky from Jacksonville went to Doylestown, grew up in Doylestown, which I looked up is about an hour and a half from you, because I wondered, is that near Ross? And you go to the high school Ross went to, you go to their page, and you see that notable alumni, Ross Tucker, also Taylor Swift. That's pretty good. Udinsky, what was the name of the school? It wasn't Doylestown, but in Doylestown. He is notable alumni, and so is Pink. So there you guys are, an hour and a half apart, and you both have produced these, not yourselves, right? And then also these pop superstars. I thought that would be kind of fun to talk about, but we can't talk about Grant Udinsky now because Joe Brady is the coach of the Bills.
Although we did just kind of do it anyways.
I forced it in, I admit.
Yeah.
That's okay. I think what's important here is that I'm influential and that everybody listening in Buffalo did not tune in to get my thoughts on Joe Brady. They tuned in to get the greatest Valentine's Day gift of all time. It's called myfrontpagestory.com. Listen, I'm on every week. You guys know I wouldn't steer you wrong. Valentine's Day is the Super Bowl of love. And even if your significant other is like, oh, I don't care. No, we can just go out to dinner. No, they're full of it. They care. The pressure is on. They want something cool and unique to tell their friends that their husband loves them more than you love theirs. So it's called myfrontpagestory.com. It's by far the best Valentine's Day gift ever. You talk to a writer for 10 minutes or fill out an email. They write this incredible story about her. Looks like it's on the cover of the Buffalo News. It's framed pictures of you and her. And here's the 2 key things, guys. As she's opening it, make sure you say, I wanted something special for you this year, so I had a story written about you. That sounds like the most romantic thing ever, something that Mike and Bulldog would never do for their significant other. So you should. MyFrontPageStory.com. And then make sure you tell the writer, I just never thank her enough for all the little things she does for me. Because whether you realize it or not, she can come up with a zillion little things that she does for you and the kids or whatever. So just say that. She will cry. You will win. MyFrontPageStory.com. MyFrontPageStory.com. Everybody go to the website on your phone right now while I tell you the correct information about Joe Brady being the new Bills head coach.
All right, I respect all of this. I don't really know why me and Mike just got clipped in this here. We're catching strays about it.
You know why, Mike?
Yes.
I'll tell you why. Because I do these all the time, and I have found that if I somehow make fun of the host or rip the host,
easy points
in the process of my spiel, that people remember it more because they laugh and they're glad that I ripped you guys.
It's like,
so even if it's not true, even a little bit,
I'm happy to play a part. Then that's fine.
I tied it into you guys, and I made fun of you guys, and so they're like, "Oh, that was funny." And now MyFrontPageStory.com sticks in their head just a little bit more.
It's been like 4 minutes now, but I thought Ross was about to say people didn't tune in to hear me talk about Joe Brady. They tuned in to hear about how close my high school is to Grant Udinsky's.
Right.
That's what they tuned in to listen to.
Right.
So this is better. Your stuff is better than that.
So what do you think here, Brady? It's a little too in-house for my taste.
Yeah, I totally get it. I mean, listen, I understand why they hired Brady, but I think it's a tough sell. And I'll tell you why it's a tough sell. The whole point of moving on from McDermott was because the status quo wasn't working. You know, the same old wasn't getting them over the hump. And it was time to make a bold move and fire McDermott and bring somebody else in that might be able to get them over the hump. To just promote a 36-year-old who's never been a head coach before from within, like if I'm a Bills fan, I totally get a Bills fan sitting here thinking, well, wait a minute, we already had Joe Brady. Like we're not even adding anything that will help, although I will tell you, my former Bills teammate Jimmy Leonard, I do think would do a good job as the coordinator if that, in fact, is the case and he comes in. So I think that part of it.
I like that too.
Be a positive.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll say upgrade, but I think that part of it could be a positive. But, you know, they've had weird things happen in all of their playoff losses, as well as that one or two regular season game that they lose every year that they shouldn't. And I guess I wonder, is a first-time head coach, like first time doing the whole game management, clock management, timeouts, challenges, is he going to be what gets us over the hump in these close playoff games, or is he going to kind of be learning on the job?
Good question. Big question. You know, it's interesting. Like, the Bills have been very productive on offense under Brady. He leaned into James Cook almost right away, and that became their identity. Cook went 1 year to touchdown records, and the next year led the league in rushing. Part of the overall point here, Ross, that like Bulldog made too, it's a little bit too familiar for this opportunity the Bills have. You know, the easy counterpoint is that, like, well, it's gone really well. Yes, there are frustrating losses, but also, like, they've been near at the top of the league in offense here for a couple years. And I think the Brady skeptics are kind of having to play it's really all just because of Josh Allen card today.
You know, it's interesting because it feels like when they move on from McDermott, it's like, hey, we got to shake things up. We got to change things up. But then as they went through the process, you know, they interviewed a bunch of guys. I kind of thought they were going to end up hiring Brian Dable. But then ultimately, it's like they chose to stick with what they knew. They chose continuity and familiarity when on some level it felt like moving on from McDermott was because familiarity and, continuity wasn't working. You know what the truth is? And nobody really wants to admit this, but nobody knows. Like Joe Brady's never been a head coach before. This could be a slam dunk, and he could end up being a rock star and make great decisions, and maybe Joe's able to get them over the hump, or it could be a disaster. We're all really just speculating. Nobody knows, and the truth is, nobody's opinion today actually matters. Like the fans, me, any other quote-unquote influencers or experts or whatever, it's going to play out, and we're all going to get a chance to see it play out, and we'll see what happens then. Because if it doesn't work, my guess is Brandon Beane would be next, because I'm sure he was very influential in this process, and I'm sure he had his reasons why he liked Joe Brady. But the thing is those reasons probably have a lot to do with level of comfort between them, familiarity between them. I also am guessing that he probably feels like if he went with Daboll, that maybe Daboll would be a little bit more willing to challenge him.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like that's a little bit less likely with a 36-year-old offensive coordinator that you just promoted and gave life-altering financial security to. I'm always fascinated by the inner office politics part of it, if you will.
Yeah, that's the thing for me, Ross. Like right from the drop here, with the way they handled McDermott's dismissal, the news conference last week, there's you don't know how any guy is going to do in the job, especially for a first time. So what you can do is judge the people making the choices, right? And we all, I think, a lot of us here recognize that McDermott and Beane were growing apart. There were clues dropped all year by McDermott referencing his dissatisfaction with certain roster choices that were made that I took as subtle jabs, maybe not so subtle jabs, at Brandon Beane. And I'll bet inside the building they went over the same way. Right, and Beane, you said it last week, right? The GM has got the owner's ear for 3.5 hours every Sunday. I'm sure it came up, right? So it feels like McDermott was challenging them in a way that I think I want people from the outside to come in and challenge them. And I'm seeing numerous now references to trumpeting the reason Brady got the job is that he recognizes the importance of there being, a healthy relationship between the coaching staff and player personnel, that there's got to be a synergy there. And that to me reads like, don't say you don't like our wide receivers in public. And, I can appreciate wanting to keep stuff in-house, but I just feel like they opted for the path of least resistance when I think maybe a more objective look at the overall was called for.
Well, didn't they have a good relationship between the head coach and GM for 8 years, but it didn't get them over the hump? And this is the first year they didn't have it. And by the way, I'll say publicly, I don't like their wide receivers. Anybody can tell you that they need better wide receivers, especially in clutch situations, late in games. You're watching the Seahawks with Smith and Jigba and Cooper Kupp. You're watching the Rams with Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams. I think if they were being honest, they would probably tell you that they'd rather have any of those four guys over, Brandon Cooks late in the game, even though Brandon did some really good things for them. So I think that's a big part of it. I guess what I would ask you, my biggest issue with the whole scenario is I believe that they would have had a pretty decent chance at John Harbaugh or Kevin Stefanski, and neither one of those guys committed to where they were going until divisional round weekend. The same weekend the Bills lost. So I guess I'm wondering if they could have, and we talked about this last week, behind the scenes, let it be known, hey, we might have an opening here. because I think either one of those guys would be guys that would really make a lot of sense and that the fan base could have gotten around. I'm curious, once those guys are committed elsewhere, from your listeners, from your callers, who was kind of the favorite? Did they want Brian Daboll? Was there someone else? Was there someone that people were really excited about?
I think by the time we got to yesterday, the Jacksonville assistant, now this is maybe because I felt this way and Bulldog did too, but it seemed everywhere I looked yesterday I was hearing more about him. Their betting markets were sort of moving toward Grant Udinski, Doylestown, Pennsylvania. So was he the favorite? I mean, it was pretty split, probably, because there are fans who don't like you've mentioned, I think, 3 times Brady's age. This guy's 30. And so is Davis Webb, or just turned 31 on the Denver staff. So a lot of fans would have resented, and maybe this is also that, Brady, someone so young. But Daboll wasn't everybody's cup of tea. Some of the other candidates seemed like formalities. And I guess I would guess no, that Harbaugh and Stefanski would not have suited them because of their decision to do this today. But I don't know that. Maybe there is a line here that a candidate of that caliber would have crossed. But my guess would be that the Bills would also have not hired those men.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I've been in production meetings with Joe. I think he's a really good coach. And I am as curious as anyone to see how it plays out, because this is a lot to take on. And I'm assuming he's still going to call plays. And, there are examples where that does not go very well. There are also certainly examples where it does go well and the guys are able to do both. But I don't know. It feels like a lot, Does his play calling suffer? Does he, because at least with McDermott, he had other guys calling the defense and offense. Now Brady's not only going to be a first-time head coach at 36, he's more or less doing double duty. You guys know how I feel. I certainly hope it works out for him, but it's a major challenge.
Ross, Seattle or Bulldog, do you have something else on?
No, I wanted to talk to Ross about talking to Darnold after that game.
What a game.
That had to be incredible.
You mentioned the receivers there. How good is Puka? I mean, they're both so good, JSN. And you saw a classic.
Yeah, it was awesome. And I got to tell you, by the way, the Seahawks might have the best behaved fan base in the NFL. And what I mean by that is they don't say a peep when the Seahawks are on offense. I mean, not a word. And then when they're on defense, they get crazy loud, which is exactly what you're looking for. And it reminds me of the Colts when Peyton Manning was there. Peyton had basically trained the fans to do exactly what he wanted them to do, and it worked out very, very well. I think the Seahawks obviously have a good team, but to your point, I'm thrilled for Sam Darnold. Absolutely thrilled. I think it's a great life lesson for everyone. His 5th team had never won a playoff game until this year. Now he's going to the Super Bowl, and they're the favorite. Pretty awesome. It really is. It's pretty awesome, and it's one of my favorite aspects of my job. I only am on sideline twice a year, but one of them is always the conference championship game on radio. And to be able to talk to these guys during, minutes after the best moment of their life or during the best moment of their life for a lot of them, it's really, really cool. I mean, Cooper Kupp was definitely emotional when I was talking with him. Darnold was a little bit more businesslike. But even, I don't know if you saw that video from Mike McDonald, the Seahawks head coach, that before the season, in the opening meeting of practice of the season, he had a video, in that video where he says, "Men, here's the vision. It's the home NFC championship game. It's being played here." Have you guys seen that video or heard about it?
No, I haven't.
It's a cool video that they took from his opening speech of the season.
Okay.
And what's funny about it at least to me, is I said to him, my first question was, Mike, when you did that video for the opening meeting of practice, did you really think you guys would be hosting the NFC Championship game? And he said, no, which I thought was great. I appreciated the honesty. And he's an excellent coach, and feels like over the last month of the season or so that they've been the best team, which also reminds me it's got to be incredibly painful that it's the Patriots in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And year one of Rabel, year two of Drake May. I mean, it already was bad enough that it's not the Bills, but I feel like that's got to make it. I don't know. You guys have to tell me how much worse it makes it.
I definitely have not been emotionally prepared for them to be this good this fast. So
I'll put it this way:
yeah.
I would have much preferred the Chiefs.
Wow, that's saying a lot. Right?
I would have much preferred the Broncos.
Oh, sure.
Anybody, if you're a Bills fan, anybody but the Patriots, it just doesn't seem fair. Especially when I still feel like if the Bills played the Patriots 5 times tomorrow, the Bills would win 3 of them or more.
We'll set the game up next week. Thanks for today. MyFrontPageStory.com, Ross Tucker, NFL. Have a good week.
Sounds great. Thank you, guys.
All right. Joe Brady replaces Sean McDermott. McDermott is the first Bills coach to leave with a winning record since Wade Phillips. That really isn't surprising. But, McDermott was 98-50.
Right.
Like, he wasn't 51-50.
Right.
I mean, a couple of guys in the drought came a little bit close, Marone, to 500. But a 662 winning percentage. That's much better than Marv Levy. 615 in 12 years.
Yep.
I mean, that's elite. Your thoughts on the big news today? We'll look for your calls again after a break. 6 o'clock Sabres pregame. Sabres at the Leafs. Paul Hamilton will join us then. Who else do we have on pregame? Do we know?
Lindy Ruff, Rasmus Dahlin, and defenseman Zach Jones are the interviews.
Okay.
Not our producer, Zach Jones.
NHL debut?
No, I think he played a handful of games with the Rangers before now, I'm pretty sure.
I'm not in the habit yet. Mm-hmm. I don't have my hockeyreference.com page open. I'm doing it now, though.
I'm not positive of that, but I'd be really surprised if he didn't see, because he
played 115 games.
Okay, that's more than just a look. Like he was
my dark years.
He was supposed to be like they, I think, thought they had another Adam Fox on their hands. Is what they thought.
Were they wrong?
Yeah, it looks like it.
Sabres debut tonight.
Okay,
it seems. If he plays,
well, he's going to be on the pregame show either way.
It'll be his pregame. Well, will it be his pregame show debut? Anyway, lines open for you. We'll get back to the Brady news after the update. Mike Schopp and the Bulldog, WGR.
The Buffalo Bills have their head coach, and after 9 interviews, it comes from within. Offense coordinator Joe Brady gets the promotion, and Brady, he has been with the Bills since 2022, first serving as the team's quarterback coach before being promoted to offensive coordinator, the role he has held since midway through the 2023 season. Brady's introductory press conference is going to be Thursday at noon. We'll have that right here on WGR. And while he has only been the head coach for a few hours, there are already rumblings on who could be on his staff. Adam Schefter is reporting Denver defensive passing game coordinator Jim Leonhard is expected to be a leading candidate for the Bills' defensive coordinator position. For more on Joe Brady getting the head coaching position and Leonhard's report, Sal Capaccio has a piece up at our website, WGR550.com. Some notes around the NFL. ESPN's Seth Wickersham and Don Van Natta are reporting it appears 8-time Super Bowl winning coach Bill Belichick is going to fall short of needing votes to be inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in his first year of eligibility. We've also got some coaching notes as well. Brian Daboll is heading to Tennessee to be their offensive coordinator, and the Jets are moving on from offensive coordinator Tanner Angstrand after just 1 season. And then to the Sabres. They are in action tonight. They are just north of the border in Toronto. Pre-game coming up in about a half hour at 6. Puck drop is at 7. Both, of course, right here on WGR. That's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Headlines. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of being your hometown dealership. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
It feels like when they move on from McDermott, it's like, hey, we got to shake things up. We got to change things up. But then as they went through the process, they interviewed a bunch of guys, but then ultimately it's like they chose to stick with what they knew. They chose continuity and familiarity when on some level it felt like moving on from McDermott was because familiarity and continuity wasn't working.
Ross Tucker on with us just a little while ago. Mike Schopp and the Bulldog here. Sabres and Leafs tonight in Toronto. 6 o'clock pregame. Bulldog, all fancy, did a Toronto radio hit this morning. Sal, meanwhile, had the same Toronto host call him. And what is my place in this setting? I was almost to Toronto in my car. Right. Talking to nobody when I randomly found out that my day off had been canceled. Bulldog, it's a tough job we have.
Oh, you're such a hero for coming back.
It's actually a repeating theme on The West Wing, which is now, I know, a show that's been off the air for 20 years, but still is popular. But certain characters were often on their way to vacation. This was just me for one day. I just wanted to go watch some curling, but they were on their way to some tropical location. Josh was taking Amy to Tahiti. Ainsley was going somewhere. Sam was going somewhere, and they always get pulled back. Duty
crisis.
Calls.
Yeah.
We need you to spend the night here. We need you to come back to work.
Yeah.
At least there's that. At least there's a connection. There's connective tissue to my favorite show. All in the name of duty. All in the name of duty. Here's Jim with us. Hi, Jim.
Hey, fellas. I'm going to preface this call because every day it seems like since McDermott's been there, all these miserable losses in playoff games, it makes me wonder if we're living in a simulation. And the more and more this past week has gone on, I really am starting to wonder if we are. I'm not smart enough to determine it, obviously, but it just gets
Good thing you called us then. We can give
weird.
you an answer.
Oh, I trust in you guys.
Okay.
It's getting weird.
We're not.
I mean,
that's my answer. We're not.
But this is so the press conference was weird and odd, and the firing was weird and odd. And I get it. A lot of people, and I was one of them, wanted McDermott out. But you have the guy that has not won, and everyone still says is the best quarterback in the league. You would think, and I was going to call before they fired McDermott and ask you, if something did change, who do you think would want to coach this quarterback? And we get an opportunity to get some young genius minds, and I have nothing against Brady, but wow, did anybody see this coming? This must be because the guys that came in, and this was what I thought as soon as I heard it, the new guys coming in from a different organization said, I'm not working with Beam. That's the first thing I thought of.
I doubt they would say that. I mean, it's possible that one or more did, but it's pretty brazen for a 30-year-old,
Right.
quarterbacks coach to name one candidate, to refer to one candidate. But it's weird, as to use your word. Was the press conference like a huge shock that Pegula would sort of step in it once or twice? Like, that isn't shocking. That was probably to be expected. That's the opposite of shocking or weird. So it's possible that candidates were not thrilled with the setup here, or whether they would go as far as say they wouldn't want to work with Brandon Beane, which is, again, that's a huge risk to take.
But you're not even taking if you feel that way already,
right,
you're not even taking the interview.
But you don't have to. It doesn't stop at Josh Allen, the Bills. It includes him. He's the biggest, most important thing. But it doesn't stop at him. And not everybody would feel the same way about conditions, and pecking order and hierarchy, everything else. Assistant coaches, who would come with me, who can I get, who wouldn't go to Buffalo. I mean, any of those types of things. So there are always going to be variables. Brady is the safe play. They've scored points, moved the ball like crazy under him. He's here already. He's the least threatening, probably, to changes of anybody on this list. Did anybody see it coming? Sure. A lot of people probably did. I had moved on from him as an idea by
I mostly did too, but there was, whatever this is worth, right from the start. I mean, like maybe minutes after we found out about McDermott, there was a lot of, it's just going to be Brady. They're just going to, and you want to give people the benefit of the doubt. You want to let them go through their exhaustive process, wide open, however they phrased it. And look, that doesn't mean they didn't do that in earnest either. But all along, it's just going to be Brady. Like, Josh knows him. Josh likes him. He's here already. It's less upheaval. You probably feel, if you're Brandon Beane and Terry Pegula, you're going to have the, subtle hints about not liking the roster. That's over. Seemed like the biggest takeaway from last Wednesday, as much as you can point at specific things. Like, that theme is the weirdest, hardest to defend part of the whole thing. And that's making the rounds again today. As, how did Joe Brady get this job? He's in line with understanding that the coach and the front office have to be linked up on personnel. And that to me just sounds like don't criticize anything. And I don't know, a team that's trying to do something they've never done, they've been close to doing it for many years running here and haven't been able to get it done, I just don't think that that's the right next step. I just don't. It doesn't mean it can't work. This whole process has been unsettling, is a polite way to put it.
Craig is next. Hi, Craig.
Hey, guys. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
Hey, I want to just, remind everybody, not that they don't know this, but this is the first time in history, I would say, that New England and Buffalo are both Super Bowl contenders at the same time. It's kind of similar to when Miami and Buffalo were strong teams back in the Kelly days, and we always had the upper hand. So I think our first focus has to be on how the heck do we beat New England twice, if not three times a year. And turning to the Brady decision now, he was actually on my no list. But after thinking about it and listening to Sal earlier, I'm actually a lot more excited about it, because I think Pegula and Beane actually tried in earnest to get the right guy for the job. But as they're interviewing these outsiders, they're starting to think that they may be upsetting the apple cart a little too much, because they're going to want their own coaching staff.
and Brady would have been gone, and half of his staff would have been gone. So I kind of like the continuity angle, and I think that's the case. And after Sal mentioned that Brady apparently recognized our maybe shortcomings, if you will, on defense, I mean, that fits in right with the New England challenge, because I believe the only way to get the upper hand on them is to have a serious pass rush on Brad May, just a solid, sound defense, and I love that he's looking at Jim Leonard.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, Craig. Drake May. Thanks for the call. Here's Chris next. Hi, Chris.
Hey, guys. Like a lot of people, I was kind of disappointed in the Brady pick for sure. But, thinking about it, I always felt McDermott, and I know Sale kind of tried to dispel that a little bit, but I always felt he was a micromanager. And what if, just what if, he was holding Brady back? I mean, Debo wouldn't take it, and I think part of the reason he left was for that. And I'm almost wondering if at the interview, his question was, they asked him, what's your philosophy? And maybe he felt strongly like, I've always wanted to open it up more than what Sean did, but I kind of went with his overarching philosophy of dink and dunk, a lot of running, which, again, if it works, it's fine. But maybe he blew them away, and maybe McDermott was holding him back. And I think we'll never know until next year, but maybe they knew what they were doing. Who knows?
Well, one aspect of that is who is your personnel, and the Bills may have held themselves back by playing the way they did based on who's on the team. I'd have to think, Chris, that Brady's been in the building for 4 years. There really shouldn't have been any secrets about what he wanted to do offensively. If it's a functional relationship, and I think it was probably until maybe fairly recently, that would all be on the table. How McDermott wants to play, how Brady wants to play. They didn't have to be in lockstep. But the Bills, I would maybe find it weird if Brady showed up at the interview and was talking about all these things he didn't get a chance to do. I mean, he's been the offensive coordinator for 2+ years. This team has been a Super Bowl contender. I would question his honesty if he talked like that. I mean, it should have all been discussed. So I don't know. I'm not really with that theory that. I mean, if he did that, I don't know if I'd believe him. I wanted to do A, B, and C and couldn't. Yeah. And by the way, I never told that to anyone here.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, on one hand, I see the caller working. I think the Bills right now, being in Pagula, might love hearing that, but I would be skeptical of it being like a real thing that happened if I were them. But sometimes if you want a certain thing, you're going to hear what you want to hear and believe what you want to believe. That gets you to the desired outcome. Can we work with this guy? Will this guy work with us? Will this guy respect the guardrails on his position? That to me is what, understanding the synergy between the coaching staff and the roster sounds like to me. It's another round of what was happening last Monday night before they realized that Bills fans in great numbers really liked and admired and respected Sean McDermott. Because I think they vastly underestimated that. Otherwise, I think they would have been a little more careful about the wording in the dismissal and the way they handled that news conference. I just don't think that they realized.
That might be true. If it is or if it isn't, it still blew my mind that they were so unwilling to throw him a bone at all at that press conference. I mean, the world thought it was a disaster. And that's not the only reason why. Because if you have a mediocre coach, you still always hear teams talk up the job that he did, or even if it's just his work ethic, professionalism, character, none of that from Pagula or Bean. It just made it so obvious that they were just not with each other anymore, and I think that that's really why he's gone. I mean, I don't think there's really much more that needs to be analyzed. You know, they did lose. If they win a Super Bowl, maybe he's not gone, but really, you have to think there was a fracture. 803-0550 to join us. Not a lot of time left for calls, but we'll see what happens here coming back. We've got the Sabres and Leafs with Paul Hamilton joining us at 6 for pregame coverage. Mike Schopp and the Bulldog here. This is WGR.
Like I'm going to be telling you anything you don't know.
The Bulldogs, Sabres, and Leafs coming up at 7, pregame at 6, getting close. Here's Adam with us. Hello, Adam.
Hey, guys. How are you?
Fine.
So, real quick, put your tinfoil hat on for a second. So I really think that this was a slow coup d'etat. Go back earlier in the year where you see the Sunday night loss with New England. Sean McDermott said you can't get too cute with a end around with Dawson Knox. And Joe Brady, the next day, says that he doesn't think it was too cute, and he was very staunch on that. The very next week, he calls the same play with a different person, and the same exact thing happens. That tells me that the coordinator feels empowered by his philosophy. Now, what really stood out to me was the second time that this happened, McDermott didn't say it's too cute. He said we can do better. I really think the rift started there. This almost feels like Tom Coughlin, Ben McAdoo-ish to me, in my opinion.
Maybe. Yeah, you picked up a few interesting things. Here's Zach next. Hi, Zach.
Hey, I think what happened was they went into this and there were some boxes they wanted to check. Those being young offensive mind, and I do believe when Brandon Beane says CEO, he's meaning like day to day, week to week, going into the draft, going into the off season, keeping everybody's mind in the right spot if they lose a game, and those are qualities that I have seen Brady exemplify. Not getting too crazy. Up or down in between weeks. And I think when they got to the end of it, they're probably sitting there saying, okay, we like some of these offensive minds. I think of a guy like Udinski, and I just sit there and say he's only got 1 year calling plays. He's 30 years old, and all those other intangibles are missing. I think that guy, we might look back, and I hope we don't end up missing our McVay or Shanahan. He's probably the next guy like that. That's kind of how I look at it. But I think they probably look at it like he's a little too green to lead a team, and do we want to wait till he can grow and Allen will be 33, 34 years old? I mean, that's just a tough dynamic.
Maybe.
I think that ultimately it led him back to Brady. He's 36 years old. He's in-house, and they must have liked some of the things he said about that in the interview.
Very good. Thank you, Zach. No years of experience calling plays, right?
Udinski, right.
Tonight in Toronto, for their meeting with the Sabres, the Leafs are wearing a special patch. Did you know that?
I did not know anything about a special patch.
You love a special patch.
Who doesn't?
I think it's about 10 days away from the 50th anniversary of Daryl Sittler's 10-point game.
Okay.
So they're wearing a patch to honor Daryl Sittler. I don't know why it isn't closer to the exact date, but
yeah, okay.
Maybe he's there. I don't know.
No idea.
10-point game.
Yeah.
February 7th, 1976. 6 goals, 4 assists.
Mm-hmm.
I was into some old cards last night, and I found one King Clancy. This goes way back.
Uh-huh.
You think Daryl Sittler was a long time ago.
No, there's an award named after this guy.
King Clancy led the NHL in 1924 with this many assists.
6.
10. He shared the lead. Lest anyone think this was a trick question. He shared the league lead for the season with 10 assists.
Before you really get critical of like, oh my God, how could you lead an entire season? They only played 6 games. there were 6 teams. That was it. They won one of them twice, and the rest of it. So it was a short season.
All in one night.
Right. One after the other.
They played 24 games. Still. Who's the first person you're thinking of right now? Who's the person you're thinking of right now?
Greg Bauk.
Greg Bauk. So I texted Greg Bauk last night when I found out that King Clancy had... I don't have a clip. I'm sorry. I'm not setting that up.
Right. Okay.
Good
thing you said that, because a lot of people would have been thinking the same thing I was thinking. Did you really do this?
There probably is a King Clancy clip from
when we
15
kicked him out
years
of the
ago.
Hall of Fame or something.
Probably,
right.
Maybe on YouTube. But I texted him last night. 10 assists, led the league. And he said 9 were on one play, which, made me think. And I said, well, you were there. He said, I scored the goal. Off my teeth. So, hi, Greg. Sabres and Leafs pregame next here on WGR.